you, Anna, Thomas, and Lindy, for this invitation and for organizing this amazing workshop. And I will go straight into the topic, which deals with not directly an archaeological expedition, as we will see, but as the role of scientific entomological expedition has contributed to the creation of the collection, the Cypriot collection in Florence, and why a country like Italy, which was a young country, was interested in collecting and gathering some Cypriot antiquities. The aim of this paper is to explore the formation of Cypriot collections of the National Archaeological Museum in Florence through a specific case study in the crucial period between the end of the 19th century and the very early years of the 20th century, when Luigi Adriano Milani was the director of this newborn institution. Before heading into the specific question of the formation of the Cypriot and Eastern Mediterranean collections, please let me give a brief introduction to this work and its historical environment. This work is part of a larger project which has been carried out at the Archaeological Museum of Florence in recent years in order to reorganize and reassess its historical collections with a special focus to some lots of materials, such as the Cypriot one, which have remained a bit obscured in the last few years, and especially after the unfortunate event of the Arnos flood in 1966, when a general reorganization of the museum took place and these materials returned to the storerooms. This work, which is encouraged and promoted by the director of the Archaeological Museum, Dr. Mario Iozzo, and is coordinated by Mario Iozzo and Dr. Silvana Di Paolo, member of the CNR Institute of Studies of the Ancient Mediterranean, and was originally promoted by Dr. Fulvia Lo Schiavo when she was superintendent of archaeological heritage of Tuscany. This is the best way for us all to remember and honor Professor Paolo Emilio Pecorella, who was formerly curator in charge of the Aegean and Near Eastern collections, and to whom was dedicated the 2007 exhibition on the Mesopotamian, Aegean, and Cypriot collections of the museum. Thanks to these recent efforts, and especially to the studies by Silvana, we are beginning to have a clearer idea about the dynamics that brought to the formation of the Cypriot collection within its historical environment. As it is well known, the Florence Archaeological Museum originally stems out of the Grand Ducal collections of the Medici and Habsburg-Lorraine families, who ruled over the city during the Renaissance until the unification of Italy under the House of Savoy. The key element to safeguard such historical collections from the troubled events of modern history is the legacy of Anna Maria Luisa de' Medici, the last lineal descendant of the House of Medici, who, on October 31st of 1737, a date we still celebrate every year in Tuscany, signed the so-called Family Pact, a testament by which she willed all the family properties to the Tuscan state, so that no work of art formerly belonging to the Medici could leave the city of Florence. In the following century, when the Habsburg-Lorraine ruled over the city, a modern reorganization of the collection was needed, not only for the classical antiquities, but also for the Egyptian collection, since Leopold II of Habsburg-Lorraine had been one of the patrons of the exploration of Egypt promoted by Jean-François Champollion and Ippolito Rosellini, also known as the Franco-Tuscan expedition. With the process of reunifications of Italy between 1848 and 1871, a general reassessment of public institutions and museums took place in the country. These were the tumultuous years of Italian independence wars and the construction of a modern liberal state under the House of Savoy, King of Piedmont and Sardinia, who united different regions in Italy under their crown. After Turin, the kings settled their capital in Florence between 1865 and 1871, before moving it again to Rome. In these years, Florence was a vibrant city, full of artists, intellectuals, art lovers, and diplomats. Many foreigners used to visit the city, attracted by its history and culture, and eventually the chance to find some old masters' paintings or statues by visiting antiquarians or auction houses. We know, for instance, that even Sir Austen Henry Layard among the very first discoverer of Assyrian civilizations, together with the Polémile Botta, who had been settled in Venice with his wife, Lady Enid, used to have journeys to Florence, staying at the country villa on the Careggi Hill. Layard also met several times Giuseppe Fiorelli in Naples, who was currently excavating Pompeii, and who later became General Director of Italian Antiquities and Fine Arts. Another common friend to both was the dealer and antiquarian Alessandro Castellani, who donated an Assyrian relief to the Florentine galleries in 1866. This is the environment in which the new Royal Archaeological Museum in Florence was established by a royal decree of King Vittorio Emanuele II in 1870. It consisted in the reassessment and reorganization of the Grand Ducal collections, together with Egyptian antiquities and the new excavations taking place all over Tuscany at that time. A young Luigi Adriano Milani arrived in Florence in 1873 to study at the university and soon began working at the collection, cataloging the coins of the Grand Ducal cabinet. Milani was put in charge of the process of reorganizing the materials for the new museum, together with his colleague Ernesto Schiaparelli, in charge of the Egyptian collections. In 1883, the new Royal Archaeological Museum was opened to the public in the Palazzo della Crocetta, an old Medici hunting manor and the seat of today's, still the place where the museum is today. The idea adopted for the museum was indeed innovative, going beyond the classificatory intentions of the previous Grand Ducal collections and meeting new displays insights, especially regarding the geographical provenance of the objects and the consistence of their archaeological context. Milani centered this project on the Central Museum of Etruria and the Topographic Museum. In the following years, Milani, who became director of the museum, could pursue his idea of displaying not only antiquities from the old historic Florentine galleries and objects from the site of Etruria, but also to open a section dedicated to comparisons of other Mediterranean civilizations. His purpose was to contextualize the Etruscan civilization within its Mediterranean and Near Eastern context, trying to display in the rooms of the first floor a sample of Bronze and Iron Ages from Greece, the islands of Crete, Rhodes, and Cyprus, and also from Anatolia. Milani started a program of exchanges with other partner museums, such as the National Museum in Athens and the Musée Royal d'Art et d'Histoire in Brussels. This is the situation in which Milani gained interest in the so-called pre-Etruscan and pre-Hellenic collections, and which brought to the formation of a small Cypriot lot. The former Egyptian museum had been already provided of the collection that Riccardo Colucci, formerly Italian consul in Cyprus between 1868 and 1872, had donated to the Italian government. This donation has been carefully studied and published by Silvana Di Paolo. A commission in Rome evaluated Colucci's donation and attributed it to the Florence Egyptian Museum. This lot, composed of 244 objects, was thus a good starting point for Milani to set up his collection of Eastern comparisons for the Etruscan materials and to have them displayed in the museum. In 1902, Milani was contacted by Giacomo Cecconi, a well-known specialist in entomology who was working in the Royal Institute in Vallombrosa in Tuscany, asking if he could have been interested in purchasing a small archaeological collection from Cyprus. Cecconi was born in Fano, a small town of Marche region on the Adriatic coast, and graduated in natural sciences at the University of Bologna in 1891, attending courses and lectures at the Institute of Geology and Paleontology. Since the early stages of his career, Cecconi was particularly interested in zoology, and soon after his graduation in 1894, he made the first trip to Crete to study the local zoological fauna. The same year, he started working as assistant in the Royal National Forest Institute in Vallombrosa, some 40 kilometers west of Florence, which was created in 1869. Here, he developed his knowledge and skills in entomology and fully founded in Italy the discipline of forest entomology. His long stay in Vallombrosa was sometimes interrupted by study and research trips in Italy and abroad, such as the one in Cyprus between 1898 and 1899. The archive of the Italian Geographic Society in Rome preserves a few documents concerning the scientific expedition of Cecconi to Cyprus. In 1897, he asked the president of the society for a contribution to support financially his expedition. His request was motivated as a prosecution of the studies on Eastern Mediterranean zoology already begun in 1894 with his travel to Crete. The president of the society and the committee agreed to confer to Cecconi a grant of 300 Italian liras, expecting, as suggested by Cecconi himself, to receive an account on his study at the end of the expedition to be published in the Bulletin of the Geographic Society. The original aim to Cecconi was to explore Cyprus, collecting faunal and floral documentation for the duration of 4 months, starting in December 1897. But, as the records of the Italian Geographic Society show, Cecconi was suggested by the Italian consul in Larnaca to postpone his trip to Cyprus as a smallpox outbreak spread over the island in the fall of 1897. And this brings us back to the previous communication and also to the current times about how we have to postpone and wait for research trips because of larger events as pandemics. 1 year later, at the end of 1898 and early 1899, Cecconi was able to conduct his expedition in Cyprus, and he could benefit of the grant previously assigned by the society. Accounts on his expedition in Cyprus were given through scientific papers and became part of his important handbook on entomology, but unfortunately, he never published any account on the bulletin or publication series of the Italian Geographic Society. In a communication to the Roman Society for Zoological Studies, he wrote, "For almost the entire month of January of last year, I visited the island of Cyprus, and more exactly Larnaca, Famagusta, Tricomo, Acantu, Agios Ambrosios, Bella Grace, Caerinia, Nicosia, Chytrea, and their surroundings." However, in his articles or his private papers, he never mentions to have found or purchased any archaeological object. And until now, we did not find in his memories any explicit sign of how he gathered the materials in his small archaeological collection. Regarding his lots of materials, the only information available is what Cecconi writes to Milani in his letters. "Since I was favored in having your address by the distinguished Professor Giglioli, I dare to write you the following. Last year, I went to Cyprus for a zoology research trip. Among other things, I purchased some 15 ancient small pottery vessels and terracotta objects. If you would be interested in purchasing them, I have decided to sell them to get some money back from the amount I spent for the trip." Milani accepted his request and paid a sum of 60 Italian liras. As a consequence of the fortunate transaction with the museum, Cecconi introduced to the director a Cypriot dealer, Mr. Caremfilaki, proposing himself to act as intermediate for the purchase of other lots of materials. This intent could have probably been already discussed with Caremfilaki in Larnaca, since Cecconi, on his return to Italy, could send to the museum a lot of photographs to show the materials on sale by Caremfilaki. We are therefore led to think that the lots of materials that Cecconi sold to Milani could have been purchased by the Italian scholar in Larnaca from Caremfilaki himself, who had probably seen in Cecconi a means to reach the Italian market of antiquities. But this has to remain only an hypothesis for now. Thanks to the acquisition of the small Cecconi lot, Milani increased the Florence collection with 18 more objects, mostly pottery from various periods of Cypriot history, representing the Bronze and Iron Ages, and also some Hellenistic, Roman, and Byzantine items. Though we cannot have any specific clue on the origin of such collection, we notice that some objects are in good shape and good state of preservation, especially the red polished jug and small bowl, whereas others, especially the Roman lamps and the Hellenistic coin, are very poorly preserved, leading us to think that they may have been acquired for a very cheap price or even collected in the field. The various periods attested in the collection lead us again to think that a dealer or an antiquarian such as Caremfilaki could have been behind Cecconi, since he had surely no clue about the chronotypological assessment of the inventory, and it seems rather like showing the potentials of the archaeological record available to the material market in Cyprus at that time. As Milani had written in 1900 to Federico Halber, director of the Italian Archaeological Mission on Crete, I aim at buying for reasonable prices artifacts even of common use, but surely belong to very ancient periods and possibly having some relationships with the monuments of Etruria. Milani pursued firmly his vision to contextualize the Etruscan into a wider Mediterranean context, and Cecconi, with his small collection and later Caremfilaki through the purchases of larger lots of materials, were the ideal means to have Cyprus represented into these complex mosaics. Thank you.